This is Project Implementation Phase 3, Step 5, Policy and Procedures Maintaining the Changes in Development and Implementation. HIMS 670 Health Informatics Administration Capstone. The agenda is going to cover the background purpose, discuss EHR change management for clinicians, doctors and nurses, and administrative staff, talk about training new employees and retraining existing employees, going to go over the EHR training plan, EHR communication plan, and conclusion. There were 3 phases to this implementation. Phase 1 was initiation and planning, Phase 2 the execution and closing, and Phase 3 is the change management. In HIMS 650, we completed Phase 1 initiated and planning. We delivered the description of an existing paper-based medical record system. We identified the stakeholders, project team, and project manager. We developed a EHR implementation plan. We planned for the resource requirements, human resources, finance, and project management software. Then we looked at change management plan. In HIMS 661, we completed Phase 2 of the execution and closing of the project and delivered the work breakdown structures, the system acquisition, including RFIs and RFPs, provided the EHR implementation schedule using a Gantt, outlined a communication plan with the stakeholders and team members, laid out the monitor and controlling with scope, tree, time, task, budget, and quality, outlined and executed the testing, the unit, and integrated performance system testing, and then the closing and signing off of the project completion. And we're here at HIMS 670, and we're developing Phase 3, the change management plan. It's a 6-step process, and we're to consult with relevant resources for each step and guidance. Its purpose is to discuss the 5th of 7 post-EHR implementation steps for change management and maintaining it to help the staff transition and include policies and procedure changes, approaches for training new employees and retraining existing employees, communication plan, and the departmental support. Policies and procedures need to be reviewed for EHR implementation way in advance, as they take a little bit more time. According to NRCC, the policies regarding information, the use and flows tend to formalize specific policy documents, specifically HIPAA related with respect to security, confidentiality, and PII. As you can see here on this slide, the table identifies the different policies and procedures that need to be reviewed for confidentiality, authenticity of users, and the timeliness and accuracy of data entry. It's broken apart by the use in the areas of clinical, administrative, and infrastructural. A couple examples are disclosure of, for confidentiality for clinical, the disclosure of authorization forms, inform patients that their information is being put in EHR. On the authentication of users, users are required for administrative use case. Users are required to type in their login ID to acknowledge that they are reading and understood they're accessing sensitive content. And then for timely and accuracy data, for infrastructure use, another example of discussion, the EHR modules will use the e-prescription message and email to ensure that the accuracy and the timeliness of data is being recorded and tracked. According to Luria, training is essential to the implementation process, and without it, the meaningful use of EHR technology is not possible. The best practices of training new employees and retraining existing employees. So starting over here on your left, on the top, identify computer skills in employees and provide basic training. We want to determine each employee's level of computer proficiency and provide them the baseline training to make it easier for them to understand how to navigate and how to master EHR. Back over on your left, you want to designate 1 or 2 tech-savvy super users. These super users are responsible for providing tips and shortcuts for current users, as well as teaching the employees how to navigate them. They're very highly knowledgeable in their subject matter. In addition, they know the EHR applications very well. Coming back over to the left again, train employees only in the areas they're going to use. We just want to have focus the training to be in their specific areas, all the activities they do on a day-to-day basis. Next thing we're going to talk about is conducting implementation feedback sessions. It's really a way to discover what is working and what isn't working. We really want to make sure that if there's any procedural or operational or misunderstanding of the training, these potential errors are addressed immediately and adjusted for the next training session. After that, we want to take advantage of online resources provided by the EHR vendor. There's a vast number of online training courses that are cloud-based. In addition, they have lots of manuals with step-by-step guides, pictures, etc. This slide is a really good example of a training plan. If you go to the upper left-hand side top, you see the skills-based functions by roles. This goes back to the previous slide where we really want to focus on the specific day-to-day activities for each subject matter expert in their areas. So if we go down here and we look at the roles, we look at the clerical informatics, the health information management, clinical informatics, pharmacy, laboratory, radiology, IT, quality assurance. All these roles have training programs, and if you look over on the very upper, the first row is broken down in phases, and we're looking at phase 1 of this EHR process. Next, we want to talk about the EHR communication plan, and we really want to target 3 audiences: the clinical, which supports the healthcare planning, delivery, and management and research. The administrative part, where we collect, store patient information, manage schedules, admit, discharge, transfer patients, manage all the billing and insurance activity. And then the other target market is the infrastructure. This is the breadth of how the EHR is operating on the digital capacity. The EHR communication plan consists of communication methods based on the following factors, including stakeholder communication requirements, internal and external technologies, and organizational policies and standards. One of the baseline requirements of the communication plan is to just understand who's who in the zoo. And by putting together something called a stakeholder register, it identifies everybody, what their roles are, what role they participate in, what group they're in, what category, the details of how you communicate, the telephone, address, email, and what preferred type of communication they have. So the stakeholder register is the best way to establish the requirements for communicating. The next series of slides talks about the EHR communication plan, the guidelines and processes. And in this slide, what we're looking at are the standard communication processes. How are we going to format the types of meetings, and then how are we going to record that information? So if you look here, we have the basic 6 standard communication methods of organization. Number 1, kickoff meeting. Number 2, the EHR team meetings. Number 3, technical design meetings. 4, monthly EHR status meetings. 5, EHR status reports, and the informal project communications. If you look over on your right, it outlines exactly what type of method, in this case is referring to templates and presentations on how we're going to communicate to our stakeholders through each type. If you look down at item number 5, In addition to having using a standard template for meeting agendas and meeting minutes, um, any types of standard project reporting status documents will be available and be shared as well. The next guideline and process is the guidelines for meetings, the EHR criteria for constructing and executing meetings. If you look over on your left, there's the different types. There's the meeting agenda, the minutes, action items, the chairperson requirements, what the note taker does, the timekeeper, and something called a parking lot where you put information in to address after you achieve your agenda. But if you look over on the criteria, it gives you the time constraints, how you distribute it, all the relevant information, essentially that criteria for executing the meetings. And once again, this is just our next guideline and process step. The next guideline and process is the information distribution methods. It's just a different way of how we communicate to the various stakeholders. And if you notice here, we have project team meetings, individual one-on-one meetings, stakeholder meetings, video conferencing, conference calls, email, portal or project internet site, or collaborative work environments. Once again, this just helps you identify which method of communication works best with each stakeholder. The next EHR communication guideline and process is how the communication escalation process is handled. Any organization, any project, any group will have methods of disputes or conflicts, and there needs to be a method in order to manage through it. What you see in front of you is an example of a EHR escalation. If you notice on the table, if you look on your left-hand side, you'll see the priority levels, definitions of what type of thing gets escalated, who's the decision authority on that escalation, and then what type of time frames are resolved in it. It's just a means of addressing how to escalate as needed. The prior guidelines and processes laid the framework to come to this one, which is the communication matrix. Essentially, it lays out the entire plan of what type of meeting we're going to have, what the objectives are, what the medium is going to be, the frequency, who the audience is, who the owner is, the deliverables, and the type of formats. And with this in hand, you'll be able to put together a very comprehensive communication plan that addresses 99.9% of the needs of the EHR implementation. So in step 5, the key areas we want to focus on is getting ready to go live and launch the EHR. What that means is we have to make sure we have all our policies, procedures that are relevant to EHR. We really want to make sure our new employees, and we're retraining the old employees or the existing employees on how to properly use and execute the EHR systems. We definitely need to lay out the way we're going to communicate to our stakeholders, and we have different formats to do that as well. With that in hand, we'll be ready to implement the EHR in the go live environment. Thank you for watching this video. The next 10 seconds will be the references. Thank you.